told us from the day he arrived. He gave us the parable, for instance, the parable of the talents, the parable of the wise virgins and the foolish virgins. The fools, they don't take enough oil. They don't take the oil of the good works, of the good actions. And that's why when the spouse is coming, their lamp is running out of oil and there is no flame. Whereas when we die, when the spouse is coming, our lamps must be ready and have oil and a flame of divine love. That's how we must die. That's the goal. That we die loving God. That's why the cure of Ars said, "Oh my God, grant me the grace to die loving you and knowing that you love me." That's the way we ought to finish our lives. And that's why we run in this world. We run and run. We do from one good action to the next good action in order to love our God. So that this love be in our hearts, because what you carry by the state of grace is your infinite and eternal glory. At the moment of your death, what you carry is the state of grace, is transformed into eternal glory. Because you have loved Him. Because you have proven yourself to Him. Because you have given yourself to Him. You have served Him very well in a good Catholic marriage, for instance, or in religious life. Because you've loved Him, He loves you back. It's normal. And He loves you much more. So, but it's a tough order because, as Daniel says in the epistle of this Mass of today, he says the city of Jerusalem is ruined. It's in a state of ruination. And so we got everything against us today. The whole world is geared towards hell. It all goes to hell. People don't know that even have a soul. You go to school and the teachers in school tell you that you don't have a soul. They only think about the carnal things. And therefore people forget to go to the sacraments, to go to confession and to go to communion. The cure of Ars says, take the Mass away from them, take the priest away from them, and after 20 years they will worship animals. Meaning they will behave like pagan worshippers, worshipping animals, worshipping their bellies. That's exactly what we see today. And that's very sad, because they are human beings and they have an eternal soul. All of us have this eternal soul to save. And that's how St. Ignatius converted St. Francis Xavier. Because he told St. Francis Xavier, what's your plan? I'm going to study, I'm going to become an important canon back in Spain. And then after that, I'm going to be a bishop, I'm going to be very rich and powerful. And after that, perhaps I'll become a cardinal. Because my family has good standing at the court of King Charles of Spain, in Madrid. And after that, well, perhaps I'll be a pope, but I don't know. But what about after that? I'm just asking you. I don't know. You don't know. Better make sure that you know what is going to happen after that. And so Francis said, well, you're grumpy, You're a grumpy old man of 45 years old. And you are very bad in your studies, and that's why you are grumpy. He went back to his home, and then Francis started to think. What matters, in fact? Like St. Francis Borgia. He saw Queen Isabella, She was a beautiful queen. You have some paintings of Titian, of Queen Isabella of Portugal, the wife of King Charles V of Spain. And she was utterly beautiful. The painting of Titian shows that she was the most beautiful woman of her time, you may say. And she was very prosperous and a very good wife to Charles. And I think she gave him a son, if I'm not mistaken. She was just perfect. She was just most beautiful. She was loved by the whole of Spain. And everybody could say that the emperor was the luckiest man on earth. He had the most beautiful wife, and she was a wonderful woman, and she was great to him. Acting perfectly. And then in the flower of her youth, when she was so resplendent, when she was so beautiful, God took her away. And then recently they did the reconstruction of her death, and they showed the incredible sorrow of King Charles. The sorrow, and he was crying, crying, inconsolable. And the whole palace could hear the tears of the most powerful king of the time. It was impossible to console him. And so they decided to make the most beautiful funeral. And then the whole nation was in a state of devastation, in mourning, despite the fact that Spain was #1 at that time. And so they made the funerals in every major city of Spain. They made a major funeral for that wonderfully loved queen. But then she started to smell. That's why funerals are always on time here in the Philippines. Everything else is late, But the funerals are always on time because we start to smell, The body decays. And so they encase the coffin into a lead encasement, So to make sure that the smell would not come out. But the problem is that they didn't know that if you don't cool down the body, the decay continues. So after a few weeks more, other funerals in Toledo, in Sevilla, in Zaragoza, in all these places, it started to smell again. So they made a second coffin of lead, trying to make it even tighter. So the coffin became very big. And then they went to all the other places, to Bilbao, to Pamplona, to all these major cities of Spain. And it continued to smell. So they made a third cask of lead, trying, and with lots of incense around all the time, so people wouldn't notice the bad smell. And then in the end, they had to bring her back to her final resting place in Madrid. And the law was very clear that before you bury her, you must testify that it is her. And so the court asked the most courageous noblemen to stand there and as witnesses that it was indeed her in the coffin. And so they had to open the third one, and it started to smell bad. And then the second one is really bad. And then the third one, very, very bad. But then the original coffin was still there, and it was already molding because of all the moldings and all the corruption in there. And so they opened the last one, and then one of the nobles' name was St. Francisco Borgia. He was a nobleman of his time. He was a worthy man who would not have saved his soul otherwise. And then he saw the horror, how much she had changed. She was impossible to recognize, and she was loaded with worms. The worms were feeding on her, coming from her ears, her nose, her eyes, her mouth, and the decay, the grayness, and everything. And he was struck. He says, why should I follow the flesh? Why should I follow the desires of the flesh if this is going to end that way? I'm wasting my time. And so on that very day, he abandoned the world and he entered the Society of Jesus. And he became such a saint, such a good fighting priest, that he became the successor of St. Ignatius of Loyola himself, leading the army of the Jesuits to great victories. Some of them of his time came here in Zamboanga, and they knew who St. Francis Borgia was. But by the simple fact that he knew that it's useless to serve the flesh. So you are not doing the wrong thing. You are doing the right thing by following this Catholic religion, by following tradition. It's the right path. There's only one path. Let us save our soul. Let us not listen to the tyranny of the body. Make a good Lent, do penance, and save your precious soul with the example of St. Francis Borgia, and with the help of our Blessed Mother, who knows how hard it is for you to keep the faith. We come so little, it's very sad. We don't have a chapel here yet. We don't have many means. But you see, Father Valan gave you a beautiful calendar, and you are in our prayers. And 2 years from now, you have more visits with Father Junmark. You know, Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost.